My name is Natalie. I'm 31, and 4 weeks ago at my stepfather's retirement dinner, he stood in front of everyone I've ever known and called me a nobody. Picture it with me. A ballroom at the Windridge Golf and Yacht Club, crystal glasses catching the light, nearly 200 people in tailored suits and evening gowns. He was up on the little stage with a microphone, going down the family one by one, and when he got to me, he gave that same practice smile he always used. Warm on the outside, ice underneath. "And here's my daughter Natalie," he said, still figuring life out, still living off everyone else's hard work. The room laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a real one. I didn't cry, I didn't argue. I just lifted my glass, smiled back at him, and said, "To you, Dad. This is the last time you'll ever get to do that to me." Then I walked out of that ballroom without looking back once. Stay with me, because this story only gets bigger from here. If you want to see how it ends, go ahead and hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because it helps me picture who's actually listening. Now let me take you back 13 years, to the day my future got taken away from me in about 90 seconds, in a house that looked perfect from the street, and was hollow on the inside. We were the Whitfields of Ashbury Grove, Pennsylvania, the kind of family people pointed to when they wanted an example of doing everything right. My stepfather, Gordon Whitfield, ran a regional shipping and freight company with his name on the building. From the outside, nobody would have guessed a single thing was wrong. My real father left before I could remember his face. My mother raised me alone until I was 9, and then she married Gordon, who came with a daughter of his own, Priya, a year older than me. Within a year, it wasn't really our family anymore. It was Gordon and Priya's family, and my mother and I were just allowed to live in it. Nobody screamed at me. Nobody was cruel in any way you could point to and call abuse. It was quieter than that. Priya got the praise, the new clothes, the future. I got whatever was left over. Gordon never raised his voice at me in 13 years. He didn't have to. He just looked past me, like I was a window he was trying to see through to something more interesting on the other side. But there was one person who never looked past me. My grandmother, Odette, called me every Sunday without fail, asking about my grades, my friends, what I was dreaming about that week. She used to tell me, "You've got my stubbornness in you, Natalie. People underestimate stubborn women. That's their mistake to make." When she died, she left me something the rest of the family never found out about. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What that house taught me, more than anything else, was how to disappear in plain sight. And that skill was about to become the most useful thing I ever learned. I was 20 years old when my future got rewritten for me without my permission. I was a junior at Penn State, majoring in finance, holding a 3.9 GPA, with an acceptance letter on my desk for a summer fellowship in Geneva I'd worked myself sick to earn. Gordon called me home on a Thursday. He used the words family meeting, and those two words had never once meant anything good in that house. I found him in his office. Dark wood, framed business awards on every wall, the kind of room built to make you feel small before you even sat down. My mother stood beside him, hand on his shoulder, performing loyalty. "Natalie," he started, not looking up. "This family has to make some choices right now." Priya had gotten into a graduate program at Wharton. "We simply don't have the resources to fund both her program and your tuition," he went on. "So we've decided you're going to step back from school. For now, this benefits everyone in the long run." My mother nodded along, voice sugar sweet. "You don't need a finance degree to build a good life, sweetheart. You'll meet someone eventually." I sat there completely still. Not because I was shocked. I'd had 13 years of training not to be shocked by that family, but because some small, foolish part of me had still been hoping. "You promised my mom you'd take care of my education, no matter what," I said quietly. His jaw tightened. "Things change, Natalie. Once the business stabilizes, I'll make it right." He never did. Years later, a cousin let it slip that there had been more than enough money the whole time. They just decided I wasn't worth spending it on. I didn't fight him that day. I just nodded and walked out of that office. But somewhere in that walk down the hallway, I made myself a promise. Nobody was ever again going to be the one who decided what I was worth. I left for Philadelphia with $1,100 and 2 suitcases that didn't match the life I was supposed to have. I rented a tiny attic apartment above a dry cleaner, worked as a receptionist at a small freight brokerage by day, and spent every night teaching myself the business. Routing, contracts, negotiation, anything I could find in free courses online. The owner, a blunt man named Arthur Cole, was the first person in years who looked at me like I had something worth developing. "You've got a sharp mind, kid," he told me once. "Don't waste it answering my phones forever." So I didn't. Within a few years, I understood freight logistics better than people who'd been in the industry for decades. I never called home. When Gordon's assistant mailed me a birthday card with a check tucked inside one year, I shredded it without opening the envelope past the first fold. 5 years after I left Ashbury Grove, I had enough saved to start my own firm, Holloway Logistics Solutions. Just me, a secondhand laptop, and a rented desk. I kept my own name off everything public-facing. Every deal ran through the company name and my attorney, because I knew exactly what that family would do if they found out I was succeeding, claim credit for it, or try to burn it down out of spite. I built mine in complete silence, because silence was the only language that house had ever actually taught me fluently. My grandmother Odette passed away when I was 29. I flew back for the funeral, sat in the last row, and listened to Gordon deliver a eulogy about a woman who lived and breathed for family. The irony so thick, I could have choked on it. 3 days later, a lawyer I'd never heard of called my cell. Her name was Renata Cortez. "Ms. Whitfield, I represent a separate trust your grandmother established. She set it up 8 years ago with explicit instructions that no other family member be told it exists." I nearly dropped the phone. The trust held just over $700,000. "She also left you a letter," Renata said. "My dearest Natalie," she read. "I know what he did to you. The tuition, the promises, all of it. I argued with Gordon until there was nothing left to say. This money is yours, no conditions attached. Build the life he tried to convince you that you couldn't have. Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth. I believe in you. I always have." I used part of that trust to grow the company. The rest, I set aside. Insurance, for a day I hoped would never come. That day arrived 4 weeks ago. By then, Holloway Logistics Solutions had grown into something real. 18 employees, offices downtown, the kind of success I'd built entirely with my own 2 hands. And here's the detail that would be almost funny if it weren't so bitterly ironic. One of our largest clients was Whitfield Freight, Gordon's company. My company quietly became one of the most important partners his business had, and he had no idea. Every communication ran through my team. The handful of times he'd bragged at industry dinners about whoever's behind that Holloway operation, he'd been bragging about his own daughter's work. The same daughter he introduced to 200 people as a nobody. 4 weeks ago, an invitation arrived in gold script. "Gordon Whitfield requests your presence to celebrate his retirement." I almost threw it straight in the trash. But then I thought about Grandma Odette, about 13 years of being made invisible. I RSVP'd yes. Not to reconcile, but because I had a strange, certain feeling that Gordon was going to do something unforgivable that night, and I wanted to be there when he did, so I could close the door myself, on my own terms. The Windridge Club hadn't changed a bit in 20 years. Same overdone chandeliers, same valets who look at your car before they look at you. I wore a black dress and my grandmother's opal earrings. My mother caught me at the entrance before I'd even made it through the door. She'd aged, but the smile hadn't changed. That same warm mask stretched over something much colder underneath. "Natalie," she said, "you actually came." Like it was a small miracle and a minor inconvenience at once. "Gordon wasn't sure you'd have anything appropriate to wear." I smiled back. How sweet of him to worry about that instead of anything else. Inside, the room was full of the same faces I remembered from childhood dinner parties. Bankers, executives, a couple of local politicians working the room. Nobody recognized me. Priya swept past on the arm of some man I'd never met, mid-sentence about her 5-year vision for the company, and didn't so much as glance in my direction. I found my seat, table 16, tucked near the kitchen doors, surrounded by people I'd never met in my life. Not the family table, not even close. I wasn't surprised. I just noted it, filed it away, and took the champagne a server offered me. Across the room, Gordon's eyes found mine for exactly 1 second. He gave a small nod, the kind that says, "I see you," and "you don't matter," in the same motion, and then turned back to the guests who actually counted in his mind. The night was just getting started, and I had a front row seat to exactly how little I meant to the people I shared blood with. I've learned that if you stay quiet and keep your ears open, people tell you everything without meaning to. From my corner table, I listened. Gordon was holding court by the bar with a silver-haired man from the shipping trade press. "Holloway's been an absolute game changer for us," Gordon was saying. "Whoever's running that operation is a genius." The other man leaned in. "I've tried for months to get a meeting with them. Do you know who's behind it?" Gordon shrugged. "Never met them personally. I don't care who they are, as long as the results keep coming." I took a slow sip of champagne to hide my smile. My phone buzzed. A text from Felix, my operations director. "Whitfield wants to talk 5-year renewal terms. Waiting on you." I typed back, "I'll have an answer by Friday." What nobody in that ballroom knew, including Gordon, was that our contract was up for renewal, and if we walked away, his company would lose almost half its operational efficiency overnight. I hadn't decided anything yet, but watching him accept praise for success, that was, in large part, built on my work. Something in my chest started to shift, quietly and permanently. I got up for another drink, mostly just to shake off the strange electric feeling under my skin. At the bar, I ran into my Aunt Colette, my mother's sister, who had a habit of tacking honestly onto the end of every sentence that wasn't honest at all. "Natalie, I almost didn't recognize you, honestly," she said, looking me over top to bottom. "Still up in Philadelphia doing your little consulting thing?" "Logistics work," I said. "Oh, how nice." Before I could say more, my Uncle Desmond jumped in, a man who'd built an entire personality out of golf course business platitudes. "Gordon was just saying you're still finding your footing. Nothing wrong with taking the scenic route." I understood exactly what had happened. Gordon had briefed the family, handed them a script about his troubled, directionless daughter before I'd even walked through the doors. "He mentioned you went through some rough patches," Colette added, lowering her voice like we were sharing a secret. "So brave of you to show up tonight, honestly." My grip tightened on the glass, not from hurt, but from the sheer nerve of it. "I'm doing better than I've ever done in my life," I said evenly. They exchanged a look, the kind that says poor thing doesn't even realize how far she's fallen. I excused myself before I said something I couldn't take back, but by then, a plan was already forming in my mind, cold and clear. Priya found me out on the terrace, staring out at the golf course under a sky just starting to fill with stars. "Well, well," she said from behind me, dripping with condescension, "the prodigal stepsister returns." I didn't turn around. "Priya." She stepped in close enough that I caught her perfume, something expensive, probably a gift. "Dad's about to give his speech. He wants to make sure you're not going to cause a scene." "Why would I do that?" "Because you've always been jealous of me," she said, like it was simply established fact. "The way you disappeared to Philadelphia after the tuition thing, like some wounded stray. You never got over it." I finally turned to face her, her designer suit, her watch worth more than my first apartment's yearly rent, her hair styled to within an inch of its life. "Is that really what you tell yourself?" Her expression hardened. "I heard you started some little company up there, playing businesswoman." She laughed, short and cruel. "How long until it folds? A year, maybe? Then you'll come crawling back, begging Dad for help." "I won't. You will. You always do. You've never had what it takes, Natalie." Something flickered under the bravado when she said it. quick and involuntary, like she was talking to herself as much as to me. Priya had spent her whole life being handed the future everyone else fought for, and some part of her had never once believed she'd earned it. I could have told her right then about Holloway, about the contract, about the fact that her father's entire company was floating on the work of the sister he'd humiliated for sport. But some truths need the right stage. "Believe whatever helps you sleep, Priya," I said, and started walking past her. Then I stopped. "But I promise you this. After tonight, you're going to wish you'd treated me differently." Her laugh chased me back inside, dismissive as ever. She had absolutely no idea what was coming. None of them did. The lights dimmed and a spotlight hit center stage. Gordon climbed up to applause that shook the chandeliers. Thank you," he said, that rehearsed warmth in full effect. 38 years in this industry. What a ride it's been. Laughter, more applause. He thanked partners, employees, mentors, thanked luck, thanked himself in every way you can thank yourself without saying the words. Then came the family portion of the evening. "I could never have done any of this without my incredible wife," he said, gesturing to my mother's table. "Nearly 3 decades putting up with my long hours. You're a saint, truly." My mother dabbed at her eyes, right on cue. "And my daughter Priya, who's taking over as CEO starting next quarter." Standing ovation. Priya rose and waved like a beauty queen. Then his eyes swept the room and landed on me, and something in his expression shifted into something meaner. And, of course, my daughter Natalie. The spotlight swung right onto my table. 200 sets of eyes turned with it, still figuring life out, still living off everyone else's hard work. A beat for comedic timing. But hey, at least she showed up tonight. Maybe she'll find a good husband to take care of her yet. The room erupted. Real laughter. The kind that comes from people who genuinely believe they're in on a joke and have no idea they're actually watching cruelty in a nice dress. I sat perfectly still. No tears, no flinch, no looking away. I just let the laughter run its course and die down. And then I stood up. The room went quiet the second I rose. Every eye in that ballroom found me, some curious, some pitying, some already bracing to watch the unstable daughter finally crack under her father's harmless little joke. I picked up my champagne glass slowly, deliberately. I watched Gordon's smile falter, just barely. He hadn't expected a reaction. I was supposed to sit there and absorb it, the way I always had. I lifted the glass toward him. "Congratulations on your retirement, Dad," I said, my voice clear enough to carry to every corner of that room. 38 years, that's really something. I paused just long enough to let it land. "You taught me a lot over the years, about sacrifice, about hard work, and about exactly how much loyalty I could ever expect from this family." The silence afterward was absolute. I could hear ice shifting in a glass 2 tables away. "So here's to you," I said, raising the glass higher. "This is the last time you'll ever get to do this to me." I set the glass down, untouched, picked up my bag, and walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the hardwood, the only sound in the entire room. I didn't rush. Spine straight, chin level, I just walked, and behind me, the silence followed like a wake behind a boat. Someone gasped. Someone whispered something I couldn't make out. Mostly, there was just the sound of my own footsteps, and 200 people trying to process what they'd just watched. The daughter who was supposed to shatter had just walked out completely intact. I pushed through the doors into the cool night air, and for the first time in 13 years, I actually felt like I could breathe. I was almost to my car when I heard footsteps behind me, fast and furious. "Natalie, stop right there!" My mother's voice, sharp and shaking. I kept walking. She caught my arm and spun me around, her face flushed red under the club lights, her composure completely cracked. "Do you have any idea what you just did? You humiliated your father in front of everyone he knows." I looked down at her hand until she let go of my arm. I humiliated him, I said quietly. I think you've got that backwards. Gordon appeared behind her, his face like a storm rolling in, fully aware that half the club was probably watching through the windows. Get back inside, he said, low and controlled, and apologize. Now. No. The word just hung there between us. This isn't a discussion, Natalie. I'm your father, and I'm telling you. You're telling me what? I cut him off, something I had genuinely never done before in my life. That I should go back in and let you keep using me as a punchline? Smile while you tell 200 people I'm worthless? It was a joke. It was the truth of how you actually see me, and I'm done pretending it isn't. I opened my car door. He stepped forward. You walk away tonight. You're finished. No more family, no more support, nothing. I almost laughed out loud. Dad, you cut me off 13 years ago. You just never had the guts to say it to my face. I slid into the driver's seat. Tonight, I'm saying it for both of us. I started the engine. Goodbye. And I drove away and didn't look in the mirror once. I pulled over at a gas station about 20 minutes outside Ashbury Grove and just sat there, engine running, hands on the wheel, breathing for what felt like the first time all night. Let me step outside the story for just a second and talk to you directly. If any part of this is hitting close to home for you, maybe not a retirement party, maybe not 200 witnesses, but that specific feeling of being the family's disappointment, the one they whisper about, the one whose wins get quietly erased. I want you to know, I see you, and this next part is for you too. If any of this is resonating, drop a comment and let me know, because honestly, knowing I'm not the only one who's lived through this means more to me than you'd probably guess. And if you want to know what happens next, and trust me, it gets bigger, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because what Gordon found out in the weeks that followed changed absolutely everything. The morning after the party, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years, but I knew this wasn't over. Over the next 48 hours, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Relatives, family friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all repeating the same story, that I was unstable, having some kind of episode, and owed my father an apology. Not Gordon himself, though. He was too proud for that. I didn't respond to a single one. Then came the more interesting call. Tuesday afternoon, an unfamiliar number. Ms. Whitfield, this is Preston Hale. I'm a partner at Whitfield Freight. A polished voice said. I'm calling on behalf of Gordon. He'd like to talk about mending things. Is that so? Between us, there's been some chatter about your connection to one of our business partners. He thought it'd be good to clear the air. I went cold. What kind of chatter? Something about our consulting partner, Holloway. Someone mentioned seeing you at their offices once. My mind was racing. I'm not sure what you mean, I said, keeping my voice flat. But please tell my father I have nothing to discuss with him. I hung up. They were getting closer than I'd realized. It was time to stop waiting. While I was fielding sympathy texts back in Philadelphia, Gordon was walking into a very different kind of crisis. I heard about it much later, secondhand. He'd walked into what should have been a routine quarterly meeting, and his CFO looked like he'd seen a ghost. We have a problem with Holloway, the man said, sliding a folder across the table. Their contract's up in 6 months. They haven't responded to a single extension offer. Gordon frowned. Send another one. Sweeten the terms. We've tried 3 times. Then call someone directly. Sir, nobody's ever met the ownership at Holloway. It's all intermediaries, legal reps, account managers, virtual meetings only. A long silence. If they walk, the CFO said, we lose almost half our operational efficiency overnight. 18 months minimum to replace that, and that's the optimistic version. I know what it means. Gordon stared at the folder like it might rearrange itself into an answer. The timing was nagging at him. The silence, all of it, right after the party. "Find out who owns that company," he said. "I want a name by Friday." What he didn't know, what he was about to find out, was that the name he was looking for had been sitting at his own dinner table for 13 years. Thursday evening, my mother called. "Natalie, sweetheart," she said, all honey and sugar. "I've been so worried about you." "Have you?" "Of course. That's what family does. Listen, about the party. Your father feels terrible. He gets nervous, tries to be funny. You know how he is. He told 200 people I have no future in front of him. He exaggerates when he's anxious. Why don't you come home this weekend? Dinner, just the four of us. Clear the air." "Does Dad want to apologize?" I asked, a hesitation. "He wants to move forward. Isn't that what matters?" "So no apology." "Natalie, don't be difficult. We're trying to help you." "Help me? Now? You've spent 22 years making sure I knew I wasn't really part of this family." "I think we both know there's more going on here than family drama," she said, her warmth dropping away completely. "Whatever you're planning, it would be a lot better for everyone if you just came home." Then softer, like she'd found the real angle. "You used to tell me everything, Natalie. Whatever happened to that?" I almost laughed at the nerve of it, pulling out a closeness that had never existed. "No." I hung up before she could say another word. The next morning, I drove to Renata Cortez's office downtown, my grandmother's old attorney, now mine. "I've been expecting you," she said. "This is about Whitfield Freight, isn't it? They're digging, trying to find out who owns Holloway." I nodded. She laid out the essentials in under a minute. A standard 30-day termination clause. No penalty, no exposure, and a trust completely walled off from the Whitfield estate. Legally untouchable, even if Gordon tried. "Odette made sure of that," Renata said, then paused. "She told me once, one day Natalie's going to need leverage, and I want her to have it ready." I felt my eyes sting. She said one more thing too. "Don't be cruel about it, just be honest. Sometimes the truth does the punishing on its own." I nodded slowly. The truth then, that would be enough. That afternoon, I sat down with Felix. He'd been with me since year 2, knew everything about my family, about the Whitfield contract, about why my name never appeared on a single public document. "They want to renew," he said. 5 more years offering 12% above current terms. They're nervous. They should be. If we walked, Whitfield Freight would lose nearly half their operational efficiency within 60 days. A company in freefall. "Priya just took over as CEO," Felix said. "If this hits during her first year, her reputation's finished before it starts." We sat with that. It felt strange, holding that kind of power over people who'd spent my whole life making me feel like I had none. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Draft the termination notice," I said finally. 30-day notice, no accusations, just business. I paused, but I'm also writing a personal letter to my father. He's earned the right to know exactly who's been keeping his company afloat, and exactly why that's over. I spent that Sunday writing the personal letter myself. Felix handled the official notice. Clean, clinical, all business. Mine took 7 drafts before it sat right, and I threw out every version that read angry, cold, or desperate before I found the one that was just true. "Dear Dad, you told 200 people I had no future and no worth. I want you to know something. The company you called your backbone, Holloway Logistics Solutions, is mine. I built it alone from nothing. For 3 years, the daughter you humiliated on a stage has been holding up a significant part of your business, and you never once knew it. I'm ending our contract, not out of revenge, but as a boundary. Grandma Odette left me a trust you never knew existed, because she saw exactly what you refused to see, that I, when worth investing in. Everything I have, I built with her belief in me and without a single dollar of yours. I don't need an apology. I don't need you to understand any of this. I just need you to know that I am not what you called me that night. I never was. Natalie Odette Whitfield. I added her name on purpose, the middle name I'd legally taken on 3 years earlier in her honor, and included a copy of Holloway's incorporation papers with my name listed clear as day as sole owner. Sometimes the plainest words are the sharpest ones. Monday, 9 a.m., courier confirmation. The package had landed at Whitfield Freight's headquarters. By noon, I had 11 missed calls between Gordon, Priya, and my mother, and a stack of texts demanding I call back immediately. I didn't answer a single one. I had waited 13 years for this exact moment. They could wait a few more hours for me. At 2 o'clock, my assistant knocked on my door. "There's a family in the lobby asking to see you. They say it's urgent." So they'd driven all the way to Philadelphia. I took a breath, straightened my blazer, checked my reflection in the window glass. "Send them to conference room 2, I said. "I'll be down in 5 minutes." This was the conversation I'd rehearsed in my head 1,000 times without knowing when it would actually happen. I thought about Odette's letter, about her voice in my memory saying, "Don't be cruel, just be honest." I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked toward the room. Conference room 2 had glass walls, and I'd chosen it on purpose. My employees could see in, even if they couldn't hear. Not to embarrass anyone, just to keep the temperature civil. Gordon, my mother, and Priya were clustered by the window when I walked in, staring out at a skyline they'd never expected to view from this particular angle. My building, my territory. Gordon turned first, his face gray, suddenly much older than I remembered. "Natalie, what is this?" "Hello, Dad, Mom, Priya." I took the seat at the head of the table, calm, even. "I assume you got my letter." "Your letter?" Priya was already moving toward me, finger out. "You cannot just send a... This is insane. You can't..." "Sit down, Priya." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "I'm not doing this with you standing over me." She looked at Gordon. He gave one short nod, and she dropped into a chair, like the air had gone out of her. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Gordon leaned forward. There's some kind of mistake here. Holloway. You. That's not... A company like that doesn't just... It's real, I said, and slid a folder across the table. Registration papers, filings, the client roster. 3 years ago, your company signed with mine. Every time you bragged at an industry dinner about whoever's behind Holloway, you were bragging about me. My mother's face went white. "But you don't even have a... You were just a..." "A what, Mom? Say it." She didn't. "I was a 20-year-old who got told to give up her whole future for her sister," I said. "So I built something else instead." Gordon stared at the papers like they might catch fire if he looked hard enough. "Fine," he said finally, jaw tight. "I apologize. About the party. That's what you want to hear? I'm sorry. Now, can we talk about the contract?" "You're not sorry. You need something from me. Those aren't the same thing." "For God's sake, Natalie." Priya was up again, palm flat on the table. "Do you have any idea what happens if you actually pull this? People lose their jobs. Real people, because of your little grudge. It's not a grudge. It's a business decision, same as any other you've made this year. You've been sitting on this for years." Her voice cracked, just slightly, right at the edge. "Waiting, that's sick, Natalie." "I built a company," I said. "Your father's company chose to depend on it. I didn't do anything to any of you. I just stopped hiding." "You could have told us," my mother said, high and thin now. "When? When you told me I didn't need an education because I'd find a husband? When you let people believe I was unstable because it was an easier story than the truth? Nothing." She had nothing. I looked back at Gordon. "You want to know the worst part? I would have kept that contract running forever and never said a word. I wasn't planning any of this." But then you stood up in front of 200 people and told them I had no future. You did that, not me." His jaw worked. For a second, just a second, I thought I saw something shift behind his eyes. Then it closed back over, and the businessman came back online. "What do you want?" he said flatly. "Nothing you have." "There has to be something." "You're still not listening. I don't want anything from you." "I never did. I wanted you to know the truth, and now you do." "Fine." His voice went to steel. "You walk out of here. You're done. No family, no inheritance, nothing." I almost laughed. "Dad, you cut me off when I was 20. What inheritance are we even talking about?" "I can make things very difficult for you. I have lawyers." "On what grounds?" I leaned in. "Every document on this table is airtight. Every contract was signed in good faith. There's nothing here to sue me over, and you already know it." "Don't be so sure." "I am sure, because my attorney, who was also my grandmother's attorney, reviewed every possible angle years before you even knew you'd need to worry about it." I let that land. "You remember Renata Cortez? Odette used her specifically. She knew what you'd try someday." My mother gasped. "Odette knew? About all of this?" "She left me a trust. $700,000, structured so none of you could ever touch it." I slid the copy across the table. She knew exactly what kind of family she'd raised. That's why she protected me from it before any of you even noticed. Gordon's face went from red to white in about 2 seconds. She had no right. It was her money. She had every right there is. I stood. "This meeting is over." "Natalie, we are not finished." "I am." I walked toward the door, then stopped with my hand on it. "One more thing. Contact me again. Calls, text, showing up anywhere near my office. And I release every email, every record, every piece of documentation of how this family has treated me for 13 years. It's all legal, it's all backed up, and it would make a hell of a story for the business press." I opened the door. "Front desk will show you out." I stood in the doorway and watched them gather themselves. 3 people who had spent my whole life making me feel small, now looking very small themselves under my own office lights. Gordon rose slowly, like an old man suddenly aware of his own age. My mother clutched her purse like it could shield her from something. Priya just stared at me, and for the first time, what I saw in her eyes wasn't contempt. It was fear. "This isn't over," she said. "Yes, it is," I told her, and I meant every word of it. "I spent 13 years building a life you all told me I wasn't capable of having. I did it without your help, without your approval, without a single dollar from any of you, and I'm going to keep doing it the exact same way." My mother's chin trembled, one last performance of maternal concern. "Natalie, please. We're family." "We share blood, Mom. That's all we actually share." I held the door open wider. "I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not asking to reconcile. I'm setting a boundary. Don't contact me again. Don't mention my name to your friends or your colleagues. Just let me go." Gordon stopped in front of me on his way out. For a second, we just looked at each other, 2 strangers who happened to share a last name. "Do you really hate us that much?" he asked, so quiet I almost missed it. "No, Dad, I don't hate you. That's the part you're not going to understand." I held his eyes. "I just don't need you. Not anymore. And that's something you're going to have to figure out how to live with." He didn't have an answer for that. They walked out through the lobby, past employees pretending very hard not to be watching, and the glass doors closed behind them. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and got back to work like it was any other Monday. When I sent that termination letter, I thought I was just setting a boundary, protecting my own peace, walking away from the people who'd hurt me the most. I had no idea what it would actually do to Whitfield Freight, to Gordon's reputation, or to a set of family secrets I didn't even know existed yet. 1 week after that meeting, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. My Uncle Marcus, Gordon's younger brother, always the outlier of the family. "Natalie," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago. I was a coward about it, and I'm sorry." "I'm listening. When Gordon told you there wasn't enough money for both you and Priya, that was a lie. Your birth father set up a fund before he left, for your education specifically. Enough to cover 4 years anywhere in the country. Gordon drained it, used it toward Priya's program, then told you there was nothing left." My grip tightened on the phone. Why didn't anyone tell me? We were all afraid of him. Odette found out eventually. That's the real reason she set up the trust for you. She couldn't get your father's money back, but she made damn sure Gordon never got his hands on anything else that was yours. Why tell me now? Because it's time all of it came out into the open. 2 months after I terminated the contract, the fallout became public. Ashbury Grove is a small enough town that bad news travels on its own. The company announced a workforce reduction of just under 20%, right before the holidays. Everyone in the industry knew what had really happened. Their biggest consulting partner had walked, and they never recovered. Priya, barely 3 months into her role as CEO, was already fielding hard questions from the board. Gordon came out of retirement to try to manage the crisis, the triumphant final chapter he'd planned for himself, dissolving in real time. I never said a word to anyone, but 200 people had watched him humiliate his own daughter on a stage. And once word got around that she'd been quietly holding his company together the whole time, people started talking on their own. A former colleague mentioned that at a recent industry dinner, Gordon sat completely alone. I didn't feel triumphant hearing it. I didn't feel satisfied either. Mostly I just felt tired. Grandma Odette had been right. Sometimes the truth punishes people on its own. I never had to lift another finger. 6 months later, I sat in a therapist's office in Rittenhouse Square, not because I was falling apart, but because I was finally ready to put myself back together on purpose. "You don't strike me as someone who needs therapy," Dr. Simmons said. "Everyone needs therapy," I told her. "I'm just finally willing to admit it out loud." We talked through the years of being invisible, the grief of cutting off people who were supposed to love me and never did. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked once. "I regret that it had to happen," I said, "but I don't regret protecting myself." Outside that office, life was good. Holloway kept growing with 3 smaller, more diversified clients. Felix got promoted. I started having dinner with Uncle Marcus once a month, and he told me the real stories about my birth father, not the sanitized version Gordon had fed me my whole life. I still keep a photo of Grandma Odette on my desk, and I visit her grave every month. "I did it, Grandma," I told her one morning in early spring. I didn't let them decide who I was. If I listened closely enough, I could almost hear her answer back. "I knew you would, sweetheart. I always knew." So here's what I actually took away from all of it, if you want the real point of this story. Your worth was never tied to a degree. It was never something your family got to vote on. It's built in the hours nobody's watching, in who you become after everyone's already counted you out. Gordon thought he was teaching me a lesson that night at his retirement party. He thought he was putting me back in my place. What he actually did was let me go. And I don't hate my family, even now. People always struggle to believe that part. Hate takes energy, and hate is just another chain. And I've spent enough of my life in chains I didn't choose. If you're in a family that makes you feel small on purpose, if you've ever been the one everyone quietly counts out, I see you. I've been exactly where you are. And I promise you, there is a whole life waiting on the other side of walking away. Thank you for sitting with me through this one. If it meant something to you, subscribe, turn the notifications on, and check the description for more stories like it. And remember, you are not what they said you were. You never were. Until next time, I'm Natalie, and for the first time in a long time, I'm finally free.